Hey guys, this is episode 13, all about building your morning ritual, getting more time in your day to do what you need to get done, and also about freezing yourself to death with ice baths.
Welcome to the Allan McKay podcast. Allan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Allan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Allan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on allanmckay.com.
Hey everyone, this is Allan McKay and welcome to episode 13. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and rather than focusing entirely on the physical do this, do that tactics, I want to talk more about your core foundation of like what you're doing. And this is something I touched on a little bit with goal setting a few episodes ago, but I want to go more into building habits and getting those habits to essentially go on autopilot, how to kind of focus on getting more time in your day. It's something that I do a lot of, and a lot of other people I know have started to do a lot of this as well, is setting your morning routine or your morning ritual. And that is that you begin to wake up every morning knowing what you need to get done and going about it, intelligently batching all your tasks, things you need to get done, assigning time, condensing everything down so that way you can get what usually takes a couple of hours in the morning to get completed, get it done in a lot smaller amount of time. And that way you've made more time to get through the rest of your morning before you go to work or whatever you have to do that day. So it's all about creating time so you can focus on the goals that you've set in the previous episodes. So that way we have time to actually go about doing them. Now, I just had a buddy actually message me today saying, why don't you actually do some episodes on having fun and going outside and having a bit of a life rather than being always go, 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 doing tactical stuff. And that is something I completely agree with. And that's kind of where I'm going with this episode. But again, there's other episodes coming up that will more veer into the business end of things. And there's going to be others that are going to be a bit more like this, which I'm really interested to see what you guys think of this material. Because again, there's always going to be people who are like, I just want the techniques. I want that email that's going to get me $1 million, or I just want to know what button I got to press to get this result or get something that is going to make me a lot of money. I think that we all have our own journey, our own things that we want to do, and I think it's about enjoying it. And I think that things like this, about productivity, about being able to work and live rather than live to work, I think is very crucial, and I think it's also really beneficial and rewarding to make time for yourself, to have an enjoyable life. I've gone through plenty of experiences in the past where I've put things that I care about on hold so that way I can focus on my work. And at the end of the day, I hate to say it, but you're never going to look back and regret spending time with people, but you are going to look back and regret not doing the things you cared about because you killed yourself in a deadline to keep someone happy that isn't probably not going to remember that a few months later. And I think it's about balance. And so making time for yourself, I think, is very crucial. That's what this episode is all about. And again, I'd really love to know what you think. So leave a comment. And again, I'm really curious, what do you guys think of the ice baths as well? So let's see who else is keen to try those out at some point. So that's it, guys. Let's dive into episode 13. Okay, so this episode is about creating your morning ritual. And what I mean by that is having a habit, creating an actual sequence of steps in the morning that you repeat often enough over typically about 30 days that it becomes a habit that you do without really thinking about in the mornings. What the idea of this, or the concept is that you want to be able to wake up and instantly be productive, be on top of your game, know exactly what you need that day, and start to go about doing all these steps as efficiently, fast, and without as much hesitation as you typically would. Now, it's pretty common when you wake up in the morning that you're pretty groggy. You usually roll over and check your phone, look at your email, and start to think about all the crazy fires you need to put out that day, things you need to worry about, deadlines you've got to deal with, and things that might have gone kind of awry while you're asleep at night to do with work or whatever it's going to be. Typically, as soon as you get up in the morning, your day has already started. and you're already too busy thinking about what you have to deal with of other people's problems that you're not really making time for yourself to get the things you need done actually completed. Now, I know a lot of us have a daytime job and we need to get up and go and work our butts off for that. We've got family or other commitments that we need to take care of as well. And I think this is the biggest trap that we all fall into, is that whether or not we want to learn a new technique or learn a new skill, whether we're in one industry and we want to slowly work over to another, everything that we do takes time, and finding time to do it, finding ways to push yourself and make a habit out of doing something, it's very hard to do. Whether it's actually going to the gym or other things too, it's just very difficult in the lifestyles that we typically lead now. I personally feel like I don't have one job, I have about 6. And so as soon as I get up in the morning, I feel like I'm already going to be running out of time trying to get what I need done. Now, by kind of carefully committing myself to certain things I need to get done that day, it suddenly becomes a lot easier. And like I said, typically you're already giving your day up for other people by simply doing things like checking email and worrying about that kind of stress, which typically is going to be out of your hands until you get to the office, and there's no major impact that's going to really happen between your morning and when your official day starts at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. And it's up to you to really kind of either diffuse all of this and detach from it, or to allow it to kind of take you over. Now, I know in the past I've always kind of woken up in the mornings and had a pretty fragmented morning, kind of getting ready for work, usually, sleep in, realize in a panic I need to get ready, get to work, have breakfast on the way, or even when I get to the office. And usually, at least in the past, there's been people I've worked with who just genuinely wake up. They seem very happy when I work with them. They're just kind of like the typical, like, hey Allan, like, nice to see you this morning. And it's just like, how are you so happy right now? How are you awake? For me, I always felt like I was the one waking up usually when I got to the office. And for the longest time, I've always kind of had that habit, and it usually meant that I basically had no morning. It was pretty much waking up when I'm sitting at my desk, figuring out what I need to do that day. And then, of course, going home at night, same kind of deal. You kind of get home, put on the TV, and kind of zone out. It's not really about having your own schedule or making time to figure out what you want to do. And this is what I want, is to try and get you into the habit of having a morning ritual, having something that when you wake up in the morning, you know exactly what you need to get done. You're already going about doing all the steps to get your morning done, so that way you've actually made more time for setting up your own day for whatever else you want to do. Now, I think it's important because for me these days, I typically get enough done that by the time I actually get to work, I've already gone through about half a day of working on my own personal stuff, working on all the other commitments, the distractions, the other things that I have in my life that I need to take care of. And it means that I don't have that weighing on me, that I'm not getting through those things, that I'm not getting enough done. And when I'm at work, I'm worrying about the other things I need to take care of. And whatever it's going to be, whether or not you want to have more time for the gym or more time to get your own personal goals done, work on a short film, learn a new thing, whatever it comes down to, even reading a book or just having time to chill for yourself, that's what this is going to be about. And that's what I want to talk about here. And it's not as much a hands-on, let me show you some tricks to get a job this week, or whatever it's going to be. These are more core foundations that I want to go through, and I think that they're so valuable. And every single successful person that I know, that I've spoken to, I notice that they all have the same habits. I don't ever meet anyone who I consider to be really amazing at what they do and then say, like, what's your morning like? And their response is, well, I wake up in a panic because I'm late for work. I rush in there, and it's all about putting out fires as soon as I get in there. And it's all usually about, I get up at a certain hour every single day, exact same time. I go and I do certain things that for me I find relaxing and I find to be rewarding for myself. And bit by bit, I start to plan my day and figure out what I want to do. And it's always the same process, the same habits or rituals every single day. And because of that, it becomes second nature to you. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are having to figure out like, okay, what do I need to do today, and try and go about doing all these things at once. It becomes second nature. It's all a second habit to you. So I really like the term ritual. It just sounds a lot more solid, a lot more core, a lot more of a commitment, something that you will do, rather than it being, my habits or whatever that I'm typically going to be doing. Now, I'm not sure if you've ever had one of those days where you wake up in the morning, you kind of go about your business of getting ready for work, you get in the car, you start driving to work, and as you get into work, you then realize it's a Saturday and you shouldn't be going to work at all. We all have these kind of autopilot processes that we go through, and I've always had that too, where, typically I used to memorize all my credit cards, all my bank information, everything, so that way I didn't really need to think about, handing over credit card information or anything else. I can just pull those number strings out of my head every single time. And I remember going to the bank one day and needing to put in my account information, branch info, routing number, all that kind of stuff. And again, pulling the number string out and realizing I was actually giving out my phone number rather than the bank information. And that sort of things happened to me before, because as soon as you put down, a single number, it then auto completes in your brain the rest of the sequence, the numbers or whatever you're going to be doing. And that's just because your brain doesn't want you to have to constantly make decisions and make choices all the time. If we need to constantly evaluate everything around us all the time, we'd pretty much have a meltdown just trying to deal with that. So what ends up happening is that you begin to have processes and habits and other things that cause triggers, which essentially will allow you to evaluate certain situations without really needing to get into it. So you have, your gut feeling, in most situations. That's because you're constantly evaluating what's around you, but based on habits and previous experiences, you're making those kind of unconscious decisions about what you need to do. Same way that when you meet someone, if they're smiling, then typically you're going to see that as, okay, well, this person's friendly and they don't mean any harm. Whereas someone's walking towards you very angry, instantly that habit picks up of, okay, this person means me harm. Same deal with someone goes to shake your hand, or if you meet someone and they're not actually exposing their hands, it makes you a little bit more cautious about what exactly is going on, like, what's in their hands, what's happening. These are all just habits that you kind of get into, and again, sometimes these systems that we build break down, and that's why you have people who have trust issues, and typically it's because you had those moments where you evaluate and you create these routines or micro habits, and along the way maybe some of these have failed. In other words, you've trusted someone and they've broken your trust, and because of that you don't trust your own self in terms of making those decisions. So suddenly you're now having to constantly reevaluate those relationships that you have with other people, because you can't just go on easy street and kind of let autopilot take over, because you never know when you may get betrayed again. And these obviously are more counterproductive. It's where we have habits that have been broken, and therefore suddenly we do have to constantly evaluate and base it on the previous experiences we've had. I always like to think of when people are afraid of heights, it's typically because your ancestors probably were afraid of heights, and that's because they were the ones who didn't fall off a cliff, millions of years ago. And over time, we kind of instinctively begin to store these habits. And again, everyone has good habits, everyone has bad habits, and that's one thing I want to mention, is just that you need to identify when you do have bad habits, and that's not necessarily a morning thing or whatever, but it's more just in general. I constantly evaluate myself, my successes, my failures, and just find where I am making these bad habits. And we all kind of have those, whether it's whether it's going to be in relationships or whether it's going to be in our work, how we deal with stress. But at least if you can identify them, then it makes it a lot easier to start to try and make changes rather than continuously going through them. Sometimes it's easy to think, well, everyone's wrong and I'm right. Maybe after a while, you can start to realize that certain people have valuable information to give, and it's worthwhile listening once in a while and actually getting some information from that. Now, like I said, it's all about picking those habits up. I know I've got habits I've picked up from my parents when I was younger that I kind of see in them, and over time I've had to kind of squash them myself. And we kind of obviously get a lot of these from other people that we're around. I might have mentioned it, in a previous episode, but I strongly believe that you are the average of the 5 successful people you spend the most time with. In other words, the people that you spend the most time around, you're constantly going to start to get those habits from them. And obviously you want to surround yourself with successful people that you really, appreciate their values, and you want to adopt a lot of those. I find if I'm around a lot of people who are very inspiring, who do a lot of amazing stuff, it makes me want to be inspired and to do lots of great stuff. Same way that if I have friends that, you kind of feel like you're pushing yourself, you're doing a lot of great things, but they might kind of be very happy in their ways, you start to kind of adapt more the comfort that they might have as well. And that's not to say, get rid of your friends, but it is worthwhile identifying when you do have the negative impact people in your life that tend to kind of push you down a little bit, maybe offer you chips when you really want to go to the gym, just so that way you stick around them and continue borrowing their habits. But the whole point of this is just to say that, identify what your bad habits are, as well as identify your good habits, things that you find that you really value about yourself, and try and really, work on those, replicate those, and really kind of make that even more of a core part of who you are. So for you, a morning habit or a morning ritual typically takes about 30 days of repetition to really stay, which means you will start to wake up and you instantly become quite productive and proactive in what you're doing, and you know what you need to get done, and it's less about rubbing your eyes and figuring out what you're going to do that day, and more about instantly getting up and taking action. And as I said earlier, your typical day might be that you wake up, you check your phone, get out of bed, eat some breakfast, and you start to think about what emails you need to get through in the day, and what you've got to get done. So this is typically the first big mistake that you and everyone, myself sometimes, makes. Is just the fact that you're already making your day about other people, about other problems, other stress points, about what you have going on. Probably the most important way to start your day, or the most vital thing to do, is to leave your phone in another room. Let your room, your bedroom, the place that you sleep, be a place that you go to sleep. And obviously a lot of people are going to say, well, I need my phone for my alarm clock. Well, simply make sure that you keep it somewhere out of reach, so you physically have to get up to get to your alarm, and just make it a habit of and I already have done this multiple times today. I've opened my email and then had to double click my iPhone and slide it away, get rid of it, because I don't want to have to worry about and start to think about all the emails and other things I need to take care of. Those are for another time, another place, and I'd rather focus on what I have in front of me that I need to get done for myself, so that way I'm more comfortable about going about the rest of my day, dealing with all the other things that I need to worry about, I need to get done. So like I said, identify the habits that you have. If you pay attention to tomorrow, when you wake up in the morning, look at how you go about your day. Do you wake up and brush your teeth and go sit down and check Facebook and start to browse the web and notice 30, 40, 50 minutes goes by during that time? Then it's time for breakfast, and again, checking your phone or doing something. A ritual is by definition something that you go about your recipe, your sequence, and you do it in that order. You eliminate your distractions and focus on what you need to get done. So by observing what your habits are, the bad ones, you can start to say, okay, well, obviously, if I go near a computer, I end up checking Facebook, I end up browsing the web, reading the news. That's all stuff that I can do on my train to work, or, at a different part of my day when I have time for that. But right now, what are my priorities? And probably the most valuable thing to do, and it takes a while to get into the habit, but if you start to plan your day the night before, and I already mentioned this a couple episodes ago about when you leave work to kind of write down what you need to get done the next morning. by having that planned, it means that when you come in, you instantly hit the ground running. You know what you need to get done. Well, this applies to everything else. Like if you sit down and figure out just for 20, 30 seconds, okay, well, in the morning, I need to do this, this, and this. In other words, maybe I need to go to the gym. I need to take care of, some creative writing I want to do, or I need to work on my website. Whatever your priorities are, the things that you want to get done. If you had more time in the day, in other words, if you had a 29-hour day, what would you actually be doing? By writing these down in sequence, all the things that you need to get done, it means that they're out of your mind, they're physically on paper, and it also means that when you wake up in the morning, you know exactly what you need to do. You look over that piece of paper and you have a surefire list of everything that you need to take care of. And it means that there is no scratching your head like, okay, well, what do I actually need to get done? What was I thinking last night? What was it that I need to get through? So by doing that, you're also committing to yourself. And I think that writing things pen and paper, it definitely has a very powerful way of really installing it in your brain. I find this with myself and other people I've talked to as well, that doing all your to-do list and your Gmail calendar, it's great as a reference, but for me, I like to physically write down what I need to get done. And I personally experienced that writing it pen and paper, just physically doing that, it kind of really does resonate with me. So another really vital thing just to kind of be aware of is that sleep is critical. And we work in an industry where we all kind of take pride in, oh, I only got 2 hours sleep last night and I'm going on fumes because I didn't, sleep in 2 days. And I think that's like a really, really bad habit to kind of glorify not getting enough sleep. And it's taken me a long time to kind of break this habit. I like to think that I'm one of the people that really, I get a bragging rights for going literally a week without sleep, but consistently doing that over and over and over for months on end, thinking that, yeah, that makes me a harder worker and that makes me more of a badass because I worked crazy hours consistently and nearly killed myself or hospitalized myself. Again, is not a good thing. I've probably mentioned this before, but I ended up having a pretty big back and forth conversation or argument debate with John Carmack, who invented Doom, Quake. He's the CTO for Oculus Rift now. And obviously he's someone that does know a lot about sleep deprivation. I'm sure he's killed it many times doing late hours and working through things. And he was always saying, it's so important to have sleep. And I completely agree with everything he said. However, for me, it was more about, rather than just doing the cycle of sleep, eat, work over and over and over, I think it's very important to have passions within your life, some kind of escape. Otherwise, time is just going to fade out and you have that automatic repetition that I'm talking about, but it's in a negative way. In other words, you're just constantly going in like a drone to do your work, leaving and sleeping, and then coming back in to do it all over again without really ever feeling like you've ever had any detachment from it. Now, so I wholeheartedly agree with him about that, but I do also think that there's a lot of ways that you can make yourself have quality sleep. So I believe in sleep debt, which is all the hours that you don't get. In other words, 8 hours a day of sleep, they accumulate over time, and so you need to make that time up. But if you are forced to have less hours sleep than you need, then the best thing you can do is to at least make sure that the sleep you have is really quality sleep. There's a lot on this, and I'd probably say it's better to Google it and really look around. But I actually had this conversation with a buddy of mine in Vegas last week about sleep debt and about trying to get quality sleep. And this is something that I've experimented a lot with just to try and get the best kind of sleep I can. He actually convinced me to buy a Up24 wristband because it was one that's designed to monitor your sleep habits, and that way you can kind of see how much like deep sleep or REM sleep that you get, and then the rest is restless sleep or how many times in the night you've woken up. So that's kind of been my new toy that I've been messing with, is just to kind of see, okay, well, last night I got 3 hours or 5 hours of quality sleep, the rest of it was quite restless. Make sure the next night I can try and get better sleep, and if I can try and get like a very solid sleep out of that, then that's going to be great for me. So that is something that more on the side is for fun, I kind of mess around with, but there are a lot of different ways you can focus on getting better quality sleep. And one is like no blue light before going to sleep, so like 30 minutes beforehand, turning off your TV, your phone, anything like that, so that way you don't have blue light that you have to deal with, you're going to get a lot better sleep from doing that. At the same time, like I do some really, and this is going to give some insight into my personal life, but I do a lot of really kind of quirky things that I do experiment with, and I kind of enjoy doing. So sleeping sometimes with sleep plugs in, just to kind of block out or eliminate a lot of sound around you. For me, I live in LA, very busy, traffic everywhere, so it's kind of good when your neighbor has like a really loud motorcycle that's always going on, plus neighbors having dogs, everything else. Sometimes a sleep mask, I know it's not the most fashionable thing, but again, you can eliminate a lot of light as well from that. One thing I do a lot though is I tend to always keep my windows open, my window blinds open, so that way light comes in, and that way your body typically when you're sleeping is producing melatonin, which is a sleep drug, so it tells your body to kind of remain in this sleep state. So what happens is when the sun does rise up, typically it's going to tell your body to stop producing melatonin. So the difference is that, especially in like winter time where there's not a lot of light, what ends up happening is you wake up really groggy, you feel tired constantly, you have SAD or seasonal affective disorder. Now, that is because you're not getting enough light, and simply by making sure you are getting natural light hitting you in the mornings, you're going to actually begin to wake up more naturally, and it's a chance for you to kind of wake up feeling a lot better rather than feeling so disorientated. So that is something I kind of always make sure I can do, and I always have a bit of a battle with that because somebody likes the blinds closed, but for me it's night and day, literally a massive difference on how I'll wake up, how I'll feel in the morning, and how I'm able to kind of switch gears and get right into being awake right off the bat. Now, there's other things such as drinking a lot of water before sleep, even primrose oil, which can be really good for your hair, skin, regeneration, and just in general, like one thing I've heard a lot from other people, I've kind of messed around with it without necessarily seeing that much of a difference, but I have heard a lot about eating celery and almond butter before you go to sleep at night. Obviously, having fats before you sleep, especially for men, produces testosterone, and again, sleep deprivation lowers testosterone. So celery, nutrients, pretty straightforward stuff, but again, thinking ahead about, okay, well, what can I do to actually benefit myself while I sleep is also another one that just by carefully doing this, by carefully thinking about what you're giving yourself before you go to sleep. Obviously, water, if you wake up dehydrated and feel like crap every day, that's an obvious solution for this. Not drinking at night, all that sort of stuff. But more importantly, and this is where I go a bit quirky, and I've kind of been known for this for a long time, I kind of take pride in this because I've gotten so many people to try ice baths because I got into this a few years ago, and now it's pretty much something I do every day of my life. At one point, I would take 2 ice baths every day. So every morning when I woke up, I would put about 2 or 3 bags of ice in a bathtub of cold water, and I would spend about 20 minutes in there just essentially getting my body to circulate blood flow. So that to me was really beneficial, and again, I would do it again at nighttime because it actually will help you sleep better. You'll get a much deeper sleep through doing that. So cold therapy is something that a lot of athletes use, and it's definitely very interesting. Like I said, I've talked a lot about this on Facebook, and I've gotten a lot of people to try it because I've tried it and swear by it. The reason I tried it out was that I kind of just started reading a lot about it a few years ago, and I remember working on Transformers 3, and I remember working so many insane hours all the time. There was one morning, the day before I started doing this, where I would wake up, I got ready for work, and I remember walking through San Francisco to my office, and I just remember literally like physically having to lift my head. I felt like it was just dangling on my shoulder. I was that tired, that sleep deprived, and just so disorientated. Now, I remember the very next day, which was the first day I ever tried to do an ice bath, that was night and day different again. I went from barely being able to like lift my head in the morning being so tired to wanting to run to work and almost wanting to punch everyone in the street that I'd see just because I had that much energy. And for me, it really came down to forcing your body to circulate blood. Obviously, it wakes you up quite a lot as well. Another thing, and again, this is more my own personal kind of benefit from it, I just like being submerged in water. I kind of feel like I'm hydrating my skin and feeling very hydrated rather than the, waking up feeling like your body's dry and you're just very not so good, not so clean. There's also a lot of other benefits to it. And again, I'd suggest reading up on it. It helps with testosterone, sex drive, weight loss, quality sleep, joint repairs. There's a lot of other benefits to it. And again, it's more of a personal preference. Not everyone's going to do it. I will say that I almost have never, ever gotten used to it. And that's one thing I think a lot of people think, okay, well, if you do it enough, it becomes a habit, you'll get used to it. And it's kind of like touching a hot stove. No matter what, like it's going to be bad for you and you don't want to do it. So there's been times I've almost wanted to bawl my eyes out just standing there trying to get my first foot into the water. But for me, that is something that changed my life and I swear by it. I typically just do it every morning now. And again, actually, I will rant on this for a second, but if you have problems doing this, typically I will shower and then the last 20-30 seconds I'll just switch it to cold water, because that way, as soon as your body acclimatizes to it, it's a lot easier to jump in the water. Otherwise, I just go all in. Typically, and the better way to do it is actually to submerge yourself for 10 minutes mid-waist and then to your shoulders with your arms out for 5 minutes, then finally 5 minutes completely submerged all the way to your neck. These days, I just kind of jump in and don't worry about that. So either way, you get out feeling so energized and just so pumped up. So for me, that's always been one of those things, like a quick hack that I've done that definitely has changed how I feel in the mornings, how I wake up and how energetic I am. So even on the days that I'm either hungover or tired, sleep deprived, whatever it's going to be, I'm pretty much jumping over the couch, to look for a shoe. I've just got way too much energy. So I do swear by that, and I'd actually love to see who tries it after listening to this, because I dare all of you to give it a shot. There's 20 minutes, ice cold water, and even if you do 10 minutes, that's totally fine. But the whole idea is you want to make your body begin to shake. You want to induce kind of shivering from getting it, like from doing it. You don't want to dry off afterwards, otherwise it's going to counteract all the work you've done. So again, just naturally, like, dry yourself up, but don't, try and hop in the hot shower afterwards or anything. Just let your body naturally warm up so it stays colder for longer. So finally, let's actually talk about doing your ritual. And again, this is something that is for you, and you need to kind of make their own realization as to why you're doing it, rather than just simply doing it and trying it out without really figuring out what you want to benefit from it. The idea is to eliminate a lot of your distractions, to get a lot more time in your day by batching everything that you do. So in other words, tasks like, okay, I need to wake up, make a coffee, have breakfast, those sorts of things obviously do together as one thing. So that way it's not, make a coffee, wait 5 minutes, then, do that and then go about breakfast again later on. Do it all at once. The same with other things you need to do, whatever they are, whatever habits are very similar that you need to get done, batch them together so that way you're doing them as a single process. So the best thing to do is initially write down everything that you want to get accomplished in the mornings, and then reorganize them into similar things. So that way you can either do them all at the same time, or you can do them one after another. So it isn't about starting and stopping, but rather doing them all in one set and then doing the next set of things. Lastly, assign a time to them. I say to do this with everything because I think that the more you're able to say, okay, well, this is 25 minutes for this, 15 minutes for this, this is a 5-minute thing, that's a 45-minute thing, maybe the gym is an hour, whatever they are, by assigning times, it makes you consciously aware of how long something will take. So that way it's very easy to start saying, well, I want to get this, this, and this done, and then realize, okay, that's 5 hours I've estimated for all this stuff. I've only got 3 hours. So suddenly you realize that you are overloading your day with too much stuff. Now, I think it's a good habit to have in general, because after a while, you realize that what you've got planned for the day is actually about 3 days of work. And the more you get into this, and also the more you're able to accurately gauge how long a task takes, in other words, you might say it's 30 minutes when it really ends up being 4 hours, the more you get onto that, the more you can start to realize and appreciate how much time you have in a day, as well as when you commit to things, you're not over-committing by saying, yeah, I'll have all these things done. Oh, wait a minute. Last time I did that was about 5 hours and that was 6 hours. I'm not spending, an extra 2 hours at work to get the stuff done when I've got all these other things to get done too. So again, assigning a time to something means you're more consciously aware of how long it actually takes. Now, it also means that you're able to more carefully gauge how long you have. And so I like the idea of carrying a timer with me. Not everyone's going to do this, but I do constantly say, okay, well, this is a 30-minute task. I hit the timer and I carry that around with me because it means that I can constantly look and gauge how much time I have left on that task. Now, I do that with work. I do that with everything. Again, one of the more crazy habits I have, but it makes me consciously aware of it. And that way, maybe I'm halfway through the task. I look at the time and realize, okay, well, I've got only 10 minutes left to get this done. So I need to really start to haul ass and get through it all to get to the very end. So I think it's very important. So that way you can constantly gauge where you're at, recalibrate what you're doing, make sure that you stay on track. Because it's very easy to fall down the rabbit hole and get distracted with things. So if you're constantly gauging how much time you have left, I find it to be very powerful. On Superman Returns, I set up a clock with 13 days left or whatever, with constantly the time ticking down. So that way it'll always remind me whenever I'd see it, like, okay, focus, get back to work, get things done, rather than easily being distracted with other things going on. So I think that it's very crucial. It also means that you can start to block out your day and say, okay, well, if I stay on track and I get through these things, my entire morning, it usually takes about 3 hours, I can condense down to an hour and a half, whatever it's going to be. And that way you can start to see how much time you've got left for all your other things. Now, again, at first, you're probably going to assign a certain amount of time and then realize that things get in the way or you get distracted. And the key is not to beat yourself up about this, not to say, okay, I give up, I'm just not going to do this because it isn't working out. Treat it like a game. Okay, I got distracted, or why, what are the bad habits that happened here? Why didn't I achieve my goal on time? It took me an extra hour than it should have. Make it a game and say, okay, well, tomorrow I'm going to try and get it done in a smaller amount of time. So be more conscious about all the time you're spending. And when you do actually go off your time limit, just look at, okay, well, how much was I off and what happened? Like, why did that actually happen? So again, the next day you can try and eliminate that, try and get down to a bit more closer time to what you'd actually set out. I think that's the best way to treat failure, rather than looking at it like, all right, well, I failed, I give up, this is stupid, I want to go beat myself up about it and just quit what I'm doing. Instead, look at it like, okay, well, it took this much time, tomorrow my goal is to get done in a lot less time. The more you can condense your day down into an hour for your morning ritual, your habit. If you're getting up at 5 or 6 a.m., which again sounds silly at first, but think of it this way, the more earlier you get up, the more time you have to get the things you need done. Treat sleep as a reward. Go to sleep at 11 instead of midnight perhaps, but as long as you're getting at least 6 hours sleep, I think that's a good, valuable number. So for me, 5:30, 6 o'clock, again, I didn't always have to be a morning person, but over time I've gotten used to it. And, giving yourself the 30-day ritual, the 30-day habit, after a while, waking up at that time doesn't take very long. I always joke about maybe I should go on vacation to the East Coast for a little bit, then come back, because your body's going to start to adjust to 3 hours ahead. So that way when I come back, it's going to be a lot easier to kind of get into the habit. But all it comes down to is just repetition. Your body clock adjusts and you become a lot more comfortable with that time. So what you gain from doing all of this is you're essentially creating more time for yourself and you're installing habits. So that way you're able to do these without really thinking. Again, for me, I like getting up early in the morning. For me, nothing really happens in the mornings. So there's less distraction, everything else around. Even with deadlines, if I have a major deadline, I've got to do all-nighters to get it done, I prefer to do all mornings. In other words, I'm going to go into work when it's 6 a.m. and I'm going to get all my work done when no one else is there to distract me, because in my personal opinion of all-nighters, most of the time it seems like a big giant slumber party where everyone's got their candy and their food and everyone's kind of hanging out and talking the whole time. And for me, I don't want to necessarily sit at work and work 24/7. I want to get my work done and get as focused as I can. So going in the mornings, Render Farm's free. I'm free to get what I need done. No one else is there. So suddenly I've got a lot more resources at my disposal, and I've got a lot more time to focus. And then slowly at around 9 or 10, people start to roll in. So the hours that would accumulate to working till midnight, I've actually got done in the morning. The best part of that is that then I leave at 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and I've got time to spend with my friends, my family, people I care about. It isn't so much about, okay, well, I don't get to see my girlfriend or my wife or whoever it's going to be because I'm always at work. Typically, they're going to be asleep till 7 or 8 or 9, so it's beneficial to everyone. There's nothing happening in the morning, so why not work at that time? Put the hours you need in, and then you've got your nights back to actually have a life and relax and do all the things you need, while everyone else can work crazy hours and get all that done. And they fall into the habit of never seeing their loved ones, and also Render Farm after about 4 p.m. anywhere and everywhere is always pretty full. So, there's a big blockage there as well. So everyone has their habits, but for me, taking advantage of the mornings, it's very powerful and very intuitive to do. And for me, obviously, I don't want to work hours and hours at a job, so I'd rather use that time to get my own personal goals going, get my own personal things happening. Obviously, I run a lot of courses. I'm about to launch a new one in a couple of days' time. And so every morning for the past year, I've been focusing on that, trying to get that in store ready to rock and get ready to launch. And it takes a lot of work. So for me, having the mornings to focus 5 hours a day on that, and then I go about doing the shots and everything else I need to do in production, I'm able to get that done, whereas otherwise it would just be physically impossible to do. The main benefit of this is when you do begin to condense your time into an hour or however long it's going to be. If you're getting up at 5:30 in the morning, you get everything done by 6:30, you start work at 10, there's half an hour commute. Okay, well, that's going to give you 3 hours, 3.5 hours that you're going to have to focus on yourself. In other words, you can start to say, okay, well, I get 2 hours a day every morning now that I can focus on a specific goal that I have. Now, I did the episode about setting your goals this time last week, and that episode was all about figuring out what your goal is and deconstruct it into sizable steps that you can take. So if you now have given yourself 2 hours that you can focus on your task, then what are you going to do with that? What are the goals, the things that you need to take care of? Maybe it's learning a new skill, so you need to do an online course or whatever it's going to be to learn that new habit. Now, we have other time throughout the day. I always think that lunches is actually a very wasted time, which you can have with other people, but you can also utilize that time even 2 or 3 times a week to go focus on another thing you need to do, whether it's reading something, doing phone calls, gym, going for a walk, and just thinking about things that you need to take care of. You've got another solid designated hour which you can use to actually get more stuff done. And again, going home at 6, maybe having an hour in between, actually getting home to again try and use that time. So suddenly your 3 hours becomes 4, becomes 5 hours, which is half of a work day. So if you're able to do that, suddenly you've got an additional 3 days almost in a week to focus on your own stuff. Again, this is going to vary, but the point is you're creating time and you're committing to getting that done through assigning goals for yourself as well as tasks to get done. So maybe it's going to be 3 times a week. You have 2 or 3 hours a day that you focus on learning a new skill. Any typical course or video, usually it's going to be like an hour and a half for a lesson. That's 2 lessons you can get through. You can get through a lot of material very quickly. Even reading a book or whatever it's going to be, having that designated time. Again, lunchtimes are great for reading books. I really enjoy doing that, just going out, sitting in a park somewhere, having time to myself. Everyone has those distractions of other people wanting to hang out and do lunches. And for me, I just batch everything again. So rather than I'm going to grab lunch with this guy today, I'm going to have lunch with that guy tomorrow. Typically, I'll tell everyone like, look, I've got to get stuff done. How about we all grab lunch Friday? And I go through that too, where, you even get people saying like, you never hang out anymore. It's very easy to get people when you start to acquire new habits that they pick up on it as a negative thing. Just keep in mind to say, look, I've got some stuff I've got to take care of, but let's grab lunch Friday. And the next few people will do the same thing. Again, push it to Friday. So that way you've got one day that you do lunch with everyone. It's going to be a lot of fun and you get some time to yourself with your friends as well, but you've given yourself an additional 4 hours that week to read a book or learn a new thing, whatever you need to get done. So this is all about creating time to focus on those goals that you've set, to focus on those habits that you want to create. If it's going to the gym and you always feel like, oh, I don't have enough time to do it, I'm one of those people. Then again, just by not checking your email and getting those distractions and everything that pops up. In other words, in the mornings, and this is probably one of the most successful things I've had, is just I don't check email before I go to the gym, because suddenly that's my excuse to leave. I instantly start thinking about work and all the things I got to do. Suddenly I'm like, okay, I've got to go. And I've done that to the point where I've literally shown up and then 5 minutes later I'm just stressed about work and I got to go. So by eliminating that stress, thinking, okay, well, I'm here for an hour. I'm going to do what I set out to do. The world around me has stopped and I'm going to focus on this. You're creating that time and you're focusing that time to better yourself, to better your goals. Even if it is like an hour of job hunting every day at lunch for the job that you want, writing the emails from the email script that I sent out in my last email blast, whatever it's going to be, it's about utilizing all of these things that we're going through. Now, the reason I'm doing these kind of rapid fire lessons every week, multiple times a week for December, is because a year from now, you're going to be a year older. Like, what goals have you achieved in that time? What goals are you going to set out between now and this time next year? So that's what this month is about, is identifying those goals, gaining these skills or the habits to go about doing them, and hopefully getting the motivation to do it as well. We all need a push. We all need to push each other. So that's what I'm hoping to kind of install in you, is your own personal push, having your goals, not getting distracted. And if time is one of those things, by having these morning rituals, you'll have a lot more time for yourself to set those goals and achieve what you set out to do. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Again, a lot of information and a little bit different to what's typically being covered, but again, really vital information that I think if you apply it and you go and do it right now, and I'm going to say that about all this, anything that you learn, instantly apply it is the best way to actually make it happen. And again, I didn't plan to mention the ice bath stuff, but I'd be really interested to see what you guys think. And if you're game enough to do it, then I want to hear your experiences. I've had threads that are 200-300 people contributing to them on my Facebook whenever I brought this up. And it's always hilarious because everyone has similar experiences, which are that a lot more energy, also a lot more terrifying experiences with it too. So yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Just leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. And also, I've had, funnily enough, after talking about all of this, definitely one of those weeks where I've been a lot behind on email, just trying to focus on what's important. So for anyone who's emailed me this week, because I've gotten a lot of email, I'm going to be dedicating a couple hours tonight to get through that. So expect a response. I'm doing my best to get there. Thanks again. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Leave a comment if you can. And if you are bored and want to leave a review or anything else, that's always greatly appreciated. Again, thanks for all the great support. This to me has been something I'm really passionate about and I love doing. Any episode I do ends up taking about a good half to full day to plan, prepare, and do. So it's a lot of work, but yeah, I love it so far and I can't wait to see what other great episodes are coming. There's a lot of really awesome interviews I've already got in the bag with guys from a lot of big studios, a lot of feature film directors, a lot of really, really amazing people that I wanted to pick their brains just to find their habits and also hear about their successes and their failures. So more to come. But again, that's it. Leave a comment and I'll talk to you guys soon.